Fox News Alert, we are awaiting word from the president as he meets with Ireland's Taoiseach, or Prime Minister, Michael Martin, to mark St. Patrick's Day. He could speak, of course, the big backdrop to everything these days, the conflict with Iran and developments breaking just a short time ago. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Central Command has released new video of Operation Epic Fury. On the left of your screen, you see the precision strikes taking out that terror regime's targets. On the right side of your screen, operations from on board an aircraft carrier with the caption, "Teamwork makes it all work." Indeed, it does. The very latest update from CENTCOM is this. U.S. airstrikes have hit more than 7,000 regime targets so far. 6,500 combat flights have taken off during the mission, and strikes have destroyed or damaged more than 100 terror regime military vessels. President Trump on the mission.
Breaking news, U.S. Central Command has just released its most comprehensive operational update since Operation Epic Fury began, and the numbers are redefining what a modern air campaign looks like. More than 7,000 Iranian regime targets struck, over 6,500 combat flights executed, more than 100 Iranian military vessels destroyed or damaged. And President Trump, in his own words, they have never been hit like this. 2 full layers of Iranian leadership fully extinguished. But even as those numbers paint a picture of overwhelming American and Israeli military dominance, a new and urgent threat is developing on the northern front. The Israeli Transportation Authority is considering closing Israeli airspace entirely tonight after gathering intelligence that Hezbollah is planning another large-scale rocket barrage into the country. Not a skirmish, not a handful of rockets, a massive coordinated strike on Israeli territory from a Lebanese proxy that still has tens of thousands of missiles in reserve despite weeks of Israeli bombardment. 2 more top Iranian officials were killed overnight in joint U.S.-Israeli strikes. One was leading Iran's National Security Council. The other commanded the Basij forces responsible for slaughtering thousands of Iranian protesters. Iran wants to make a deal. Trump confirmed it publicly. But he also made clear that Iran is a country built on disinformation and that the talks, whatever form they take, are happening against the backdrop of an air campaign that is not slowing down. Tonight, the full breakdown. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News. Let's get into it. The CENTCOM update released today is not just a progress report. It is a historical document, a real-time record of what may be the most remarkable air campaign ever waged in modern warfare. 7,000 targets struck inside Iran. That number encompasses every category of Iranian military power: missile launchers, drone facilities, naval installations, command and control nodes, air defense systems, communications infrastructure, weapons manufacturing plants, military leadership compounds, 7,000 separate targets identified by intelligence, confirmed by surveillance, and eliminated by precision weapons delivered by the most capable air forces on Earth. 6,500 combat flights have taken off during the mission. That is an average of over 400 sorties per day across the length of the campaign, a pace of aerial operations that has not been sustained in any conflict in recent memory. F-35 stealth fighters, B-52 heavy bombers, B-2 Spirit stealth aircraft capable of penetrating any air defense system in the world, carrier-based aircraft operating from the USS Gerald Ford and the USS George H.W. Bush, strike packages launching every hour around the clock, hitting targets across a country twice the size of Texas, more than 100 Iranian military vessels destroyed or damaged. Iran's Navy, the force its commanders spent decades building as a tool of regional power projection and a threat to global shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, is functionally gone. Not degraded, not reduced, gone. President Trump assessed the campaign's results with characteristic directness. They have been hit like nobody has ever been hit before. Most of their missiles and drones extinguished. 2 full layers of Iranian leadership fully eliminated. Retired Navy Vice Admiral Mark Fox, former deputy commander of CENTCOM, called this campaign the most remarkable air campaign ever waged. Not remarkable by the standards of the current era, remarkable by the standards of all of military history. He placed it in the context of Desert Storm and Iraqi freedom and said what is happening in Iran has taken aerial warfare to an entirely new level, unprecedented in its scale, its precision, and its pace. The overnight strikes that produced the most strategically significant headlines were not strikes on weapons or infrastructure. They were strikes on people. Specifically, the two senior Iranian officials eliminated in joint U.S. nice Israeli operations that further hollowed out whatever remains of the Iranian regime's command structure. Ali Larijani, confirmed dead by Israel's defense minister, described by Israeli officials as the de facto leader of Iran following the killing of the supreme leader, had been in the streets of Tehran just days before his death, giving live television interviews and directly threatening President Trump in the United States on camera. He appeared confident. He appeared untouchable. He appeared to believe that his public visibility in the Iranian capital was a demonstration of the regime's resilience. It was a fatal miscalculation. Days after those interviews, a precision strike found him. The de facto leader of Iran, the last major well-known hardliner still standing in the regime's upper ranks, is dead. In a separate strike, Israeli forces eliminated the commander of the Basij forces, the wing of the IRGC responsible for the brutal internal crackdowns that killed tens of thousands of Iranian protesters in the weeks before this conflict began. More than a dozen Basij officials and commanders were killed alongside him in the same strike. This man was not a military adversary in the conventional sense. He was the architect of mass murder against his own people. The force he commanded was the instrument through which the Iranian regime maintained its grip on power through terror, rounding up protesters, shooting them in the streets, arresting and torturing those who survived to demand democratic reform. His elimination does not just remove a military threat, it removes one of the primary instruments of repression that has kept the Iranian population from taking their country back. Vice Admiral Fox's assessment of the succession problem was terse and direct. Bad things happen to bad people, and whoever steps up to fill the roles of these eliminated officials will probably meet a similar fate. Even as the campaign against Iran reaches unprecedented levels of success by every measurable military metric, a sobering development on Israel's northern front is forcing a major operational decision. The Israeli Transportation Authority is currently considering closing Israeli airspace entirely tonight. The reason: Israeli intelligence has gathered information indicating that Hezbollah is planning another large-scale rocket barrage into Israel, significant enough that the risk to civilian and commercial air traffic over the country is being assessed as potentially prohibitive. Closing a country's airspace is an extraordinary measure. It is not a precaution taken lightly or routinely. It is a recognition that the threat environment has reached a level at which the normal operation of civilian aviation cannot be safely maintained. For a country like Israel, a technologically advanced, internationally connected nation with one of the busiest airports in the Middle East, closing airspace represents an enormous economic and logistical disruption on top of everything else this conflict has already imposed. The reason Hezbollah retains the capability to force this decision, even after weeks of intensive Israeli airstrikes targeting its infrastructure in southern Lebanon and Beirut, goes to a fundamental mathematical reality that Vice Admiral Fox laid out with precision. Before this conflict began, Hezbollah was estimated to possess close to 100,000 missiles of varying range and capability, the largest non-state missile arsenal in history, built and supplied by Iran over decades of patient investment. Israeli strikes have eliminated approximately 75% of that arsenal. 75% sounds like a decisive achievement, and militarily it is. The capability has been dramatically reduced. But 75% of 100,000 missiles still leaves approximately 25,000 missiles, tens of thousands of rockets and projectiles still in Lebanese territory, still aimed at Israel, still capable of being fired in coordinated barrages that test the limits of even Israel's extraordinary air defense network. That is the threat that may close Israeli airspace tonight. Not a defeated enemy, a degraded enemy that still has enough weapons to be extraordinarily dangerous. One of the most significant developments of the past 72 hours did not happen on a battlefield. It happened in a text message and a conversation, and President Trump confirmed it publicly when asked about the possibility of a deal with the Iranian regime. Iran wants to make a deal. They are talking to American officials. Trump said it directly. Those 7 words, "they are talking to our people," represent one of the most consequential statements of this conflict because they confirm what the combination of military, economic, and leadership pressure has been building toward. A regime that is running out of options is beginning to calculate that negotiations offer a better outcome than continuing to fight. Trump was careful about the framing. He noted that Iran is a country built on disinformation, one that has now added artificial intelligence to its toolkit of deception. The implicit message is clear. The fact that Iran wants to talk does not mean the United States trusts Iran's intentions. It does not mean the bombs stop falling. It does not mean the campaign pauses while diplomats exchange pleasantries. What it means is that the pressure is working. The elimination of leadership figures, the destruction of military capability, the economic strangulation through the Karg Island strikes and the Strait of Hormuz operations, the international coalition assembling to keep the world's oil corridor open, all of it is producing exactly the effect that coercive military strategy is designed to produce. An adversary calculating that the cost of continuing to resist exceeds the cost of finding a way out. The terms that the United States has consistently stated as its objectives have not changed. Verified elimination of Iran's nuclear weapons program, unfettered international inspection access, surrender of enriched uranium stockpiles, an end to Iranian support for terrorism through proxy networks. Those objectives remain, and Iran's willingness to talk means the question is now whether Iran is prepared to accept those terms or whether the talking is simply a delay tactic to buy time and breathing space. Trump's answer to that question, implicit in everything he has said, is the campaign continues until the objectives are met. The debate over whether Operation Epic Fury was necessary, whether the United States was justified in launching what Vice Admiral Fox called the most remarkable air campaign in history, has been answered with clarity by the evidence that continues to emerge about what Iran was actually building before the first bomb fell. Speaker Mike Johnson, responding to criticism that Iran posed no imminent threat to the United States, laid out the actual intelligence picture in terms that cut through the political argument. Iran was very close to nuclear enrichment capability at the level required for weapons. It was building ballistic missiles at a pace that no nation in the region, not Israel, not Saudi Arabia, not the Gulf states, not the United States' own regional allies, could keep up with. The pace of Iranian missile production was outrunning the defensive capacity of every American ally in the region. American personnel, American installations, American civilian and military personnel were directly in the path of a missile buildup that was designed explicitly to be fired at Americans. Vice Admiral Fox reinforced that assessment from the operational perspective. Think about what it would look like if this campaign had not happened, he said. If Iran had been allowed to complete its plan to build thousands and thousands of additional ballistic missiles and drones, if the nuclear program had reached the threshold of weapons capability, if the regime had achieved the nuclear shield behind which it could threaten the Strait of Hormuz with genuine impunity, closing the world's most critical oil corridor, from behind a nuclear deterrent that made any military response to that closure effectively impossible. That was the trajectory. That was where the intelligence was pointing. And the decision to launch Operation Epic Fury was the decision to close that trajectory before it reached its destination. Fox put it simply, the Iranians have not changed their stripes in 47 years. Every time they chant death to America, he said, we ought to take that literally. We ought to take it seriously. And for the first time in decades, the United States and Israel together are doing exactly that. As the campaign enters its third week, the strategic picture is simultaneously encouraging and complex, a combination of remarkable military success and persistent, dangerous threats that require continued vigilance. The Strait of Hormuz remains the central economic pressure point of this conflict. Vice Admiral Fox was direct about the current state of the strait. Iran's mine-laying vessels have been destroyed. Their small boats have been eliminated. The threat of mining the waterway has been substantially reduced. Ballistic missile capability against shipping has been degraded by north of 90%. The primary remaining threat to vessels in the strait is Iranian drones and coastal defense cruise missiles, threats that the United States and its allies are actively targeting and eliminating. Fox's assessment of the overall trajectory is measured but clear. The curve is moving in the right direction. Iran is expending weapons at a rate it cannot sustain and cannot replenish because the manufacturing capacity to replenish them has been destroyed. Every drone fired, every cruise missile launched, every rocket that leaves a Hezbollah launcher in Lebanon is a weapon that cannot be replaced. The arithmetic of this conflict favors the side with the industrial capacity to sustain the fight, and that side is not Iran. The European allies, however, remain frustratingly slow to commit to the Strait Defense Coalition that Trump has demanded. The reluctance of European governments, dependent on Gulf oil, aware of the stakes, but hesitant to make the military commitment that the moment requires, is a political problem that the United States continues to press from multiple diplomatic channels. Iran's proxy network continues to operate across the region, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shia militias in Iraq targeting the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, the broader architecture of Iranian-sponsored violence that has defined the Middle East for nearly 5 decades, but that network is operating increasingly without coherent direction from its sponsor. The command links between Tehran and its proxies are degraded, the funding channels are under pressure, and the leaders who built and directed those networks are being systematically eliminated. The path forward, in Fox's framing, requires 2 things that are equally important and equally demanding: the operational persistence to continue degrading the Iranian military until the objectives are fully met, and the strategic clarity to not grow weary of doing what is right. This campaign is working. The world is watching. And the question of how it ends is being answered strike by strike, day by day. Here is today's question. CENTCOM has hit 7,000 targets, and Iran is now asking to make a deal, but Hezbollah still has tens of thousands of missiles, and Israel may close its airspace tonight. Do you think the deal Iran is offering is genuine, or is it a delay tactic to buy time while Hezbollah fires everything it has left? And what does a real deal look like from your perspective? Drop your answer in the comments. The most insightful responses get featured in our next video. Call to action. If this breakdown gave you the full picture that most coverage is missing, hit that like button right now, 2 seconds. That is all it takes. Subscribe if you are not already here. Every major development in this conflict covered with the depth and context the story demands. Turn on notifications. With Israel potentially closing its airspace tonight, this situation is moving fast. You do not want to be behind. Share this video. This is the breakdown someone in your life needs right now. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News. We will be back the moment this story develops further. Stay sharp, stay informed,